Lovely. I'm here today with Laura from Divine Light Yoga. And the reason we're having here today, I want to talk to her about a question we hear from our community at Kids Yoga Stories a lot about how do you engage children of different age groups? So, Laura, we're hearing in the preschool ages, right, that children are rolling up in their mats and they're not engaged, and it's hard to get them thinking and on task with the yoga class. And then sort of that next grade up, it's more like my daughter's 11, thinking about yoga's uncool, or it's lame, or I don't want to do it in front of my friends. And then the teenage years, how do we engage those children to make it relevant and appropriate for them? So I'd love to speak to you because I know that you're teaching yoga teacher training around the world, which is amazing. I can't wait to hear all about that. But before we jump in, I'd love to hear a bit of your background. What's your work? What's your passion? Let's get to know you and your work.
Well, thank you for having me. And
Same here.
I think, as you know, we have quite a similar background. So I'm from the UK and I studied education. So before I was a yoga teacher, I was an early years educator. And after I graduated, I moved to Hong Kong, where I was working for a nonprofit, working with schools in the local community in Hong Kong. And then I moved into international schools. And alongside that, alongside my education journey as a school teacher, was my yoga journey. So I started with my granny when I was 15 years old, going to classes with her. And I was always in and out with my yoga practice throughout my teenage years and my early 20s. So obsessed with it for 2 months, forgot about it for 3 months, very in and out, which I think we still see with some teenagers and young people. Yeah. And so I get it. It's the lifestyle. Right. And then I found myself in India. I don't know how, by some guidance, I feel, to do my 200-hour. Really, I just went for my own knowledge, really, and to experience it myself. But I came out and I just had these wonderful opportunities to bring yoga to Hong Kong in schools, international schools, local schools. And I very quickly, dove completely into yoga and mindfulness, doing all my weekends were spent training, doing all sorts of training, traveling all over the world to do teacher trainings, to attend teacher trainings. And I spent 2 years working with different schools and within the community in Hong Kong with children's yoga. And then I went to Thailand and was working with a nonprofit organization there. And then I developed Divine Light Yoga. So I had the time, the space, the inspiration from the nature, the inspiration from the children to develop Divine Light Yoga. And for the last 8 years, I've been traveling all over, reaching communities everywhere to lead my Yoga Alliance registered children's yoga teacher training.
Oh, I love this. I love this. And I love how we haven't met before, Laura. So it's super exciting that we're almost like these kind of like soul sisters internationally, right? So in parallel, when I finished my education degree, I worked in Guatemala, international schools, and then in Australia, and then I moved to San Francisco. So in that journey, right, there was a point when I took my yoga teacher training in Australia, and I had that moment, and I'm sure you did too, right, of that aha thinking, oh my goodness, if I had had this knowledge of the ancient practice of yoga in my school and when I was teaching, it would have made a huge difference. And that's really where, for me, that's where I started writing yoga stories. And that really was my passion. I was obsessed with yoga picture books. So I'm curious to know, and that's when my daughter was little when I started to publish them, over 10 years ago. So I'm curious about what was that for you? What was that aha moment? Because we work with a lot of teachers in our community and they're wanting to start a side business or work in yoga as well. What was that moment for you that you knew that you had to make that jump from being a teacher to full-time yoga teacher?
Yeah, I mean, this was a big thing for me. I actually did a free workshop and a series on it last year because I know there are a lot of teachers in my community as well that are really looking to jump from the education system, where it can feel Well, from my experience, I know that it felt like I wasn't really doing the work that I wanted to do because there was so much paperwork and
Yeah.
so many things that I had to teach that I didn't really truly believe that children needed to learn or shouldn't maybe learn in this particular way. Um, and I just wanted to work with children to support their, mental health or emotional well-being. I always wanted to work with children therapeutically. And so then when I was able to see, I was very fortunate to be able to take my
Mhm.
yoga teachings into the classroom.
Yeah.
And when I was able to see the benefit that it could have on children when they're experiencing it day to day, just little bits and pieces,
Right.
at the beginning of story time, at the beginning of circle time, after lunch, just these pockets of 2 minutes here, 4 minutes there can make such a huge difference to their mental health, their overall well-being, their focus, the
Right.
class as a whole. And honestly, for me as a teacher, as a school teacher, it makes such a big difference.
Right.
And so then I just very quickly transitioned into working directly with schools, with various schools in Hong Kong. And then again, I would say quite quickly moved into the teacher training aspect because I just really wanted to share the knowledge and the experiences I'd had so
Right.
that other school teachers could benefit from it, so that the children in their care could also benefit
I
from it.
love it. I love it. So what you did is you were impacting one community in your classroom, but now you're impacting international communities. And I think that from your experience in education, that's where your knowledge and training came from, right? To learn how to engage children and
Mhm.
understand their different milestones for age appropriate activities and how to engage them, what making it relevant. So I'd love for us to talk about, what do you see are some of the reasons or factors, for example, of why yoga teachers are finding it particularly difficult to engage children. I feel like more so now. It's something that even though we've been doing this work for 10 years, I feel like it's getting worse and worse, right? And so what do you notice are kind of like those barriers?
I think there's many different reasons as to why children aren't necessarily engaged or remaining focused in yoga classes. Um, a big one, which I'm sure the majority of people listening would agree, is the way in which the world is moving.
Right.
Children aren't as connected to the natural world. Children aren't necessarily given the time to just explore, to just sit, to just be.
Yeah.
And because it's a very fast-paced world, there's a lot of screen time. And this is not just coming from, parents or schools. It just is the way that the world is now.
Right.
You can't avoid it. And so I think children's attention spans are shorter.
Mhm.
And so we just kind of have to, we do have to kind of go with it as the teacher. I think also their nervous systems are struggling, like most of ours,
Yeah.
especially coming through the pandemic. No matter what their age, they have experienced something detrimental to their overall mental well-being and the health of the nervous system and the brain. And
Yeah.
I think because of that, keeping them engaged, it comes down to their focus and their
Mhm.
self-awareness.
Right.
Um, and where their nervous system and their brain is at. I think that's one of the actually quite a few things that
Right.
contribute.
Right. And
Yeah.
I just read the book by UK author Stolen Focus. Have you read that? Johann
No, I
Hari?
haven't.
It's amazing and horrifying at the same time, fascinating. But there's a lot, he looks at what has taken our focus as adults too. So you not only have children who are displaying these characteristics, but also as adults too, as educators, parents, right? We have a hard time. We're sucked into technology and lots of different things that are distracting our minds as well. So not only it's like it's both sides, right? If we're not calm and organized, then it's hard to make our students calm and organized as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Children will pick up on this, and it's
Mhm.
very hard if, as a teacher, our nervous systems are struggling
Yeah.
and we're not calm or we're not organized. or we just don't have energy even for ourselves. It's really hard to hold the
Mhm.
space for children, especially young children.
Right,
And they really feel that. And it's very dysregulating for them.
right.
So that's where self-care for teachers is so important, and parents too. But you're as a teacher, you're trying to hold space for 25, 30 children.
Yeah.
That's a lot if you're not completely intact yourself.
Yeah, right. And then coupled with the demands that we have as parents and educators, right? So we're being
Yeah.
told for right now here, I don't know if it's like this in the UK, but here in the States, there's a huge movement towards we need to focus on academics to make up for the learning loss, right? So
Mhm.
SEL was in favor a couple of years ago from the administrator point of view. And I think I can speak for most places. We've been talking to people around different areas of the States. But now, the teachers need to focus back on academics. But the problem is the children aren't there yet, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these demands put on them. And as parents, there's a lot of demands on us, right? We're having to catch up financially and make up for the time that we were out of our jobs and also comparing to others, right? There's a lot of comparison as parents in thinking, oh, well, that family looks like they have it handled and ours are not so great. And,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of other demands too, without just talking about I know that affects our nervous system as well.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. And so, what would you say, Laura, from your experience? Because one of the beautiful things about your work in particular is that you've had this global look. You've been in and out of these communities around the world, right? And so, you can offer that wisdom that you may see working with different children's, different populations from different communities. What would you say are sort of like maybe the top tips of what you use in engaging children in yoga?
I think, it is very different now, I would say, to pre-pandemic. But I think the fundamentals really are keeping it age appropriate, as many of us know. How we teach a 3-year-old is obviously completely different to how you teach a 15-year-old, no matter what you're teaching.
Right.
So keeping it very age appropriate, but keeping it relevant and relatable.
Mm.
So again, what a 3-year-old relates to:
Mhm.
animals, nature, sounds, music, very typical 3-year-old, is going to be very different to what a 14-year-old relates to. So
Mhm.
it might be that they're more athletic or academic or artistic. And so that is how you can make your classes more interesting and relatable for them. Equally, from a global perspective, what an 8-year-old in Hong Kong
Mhm.
is, relatable for them is going to be very different to an 8-year-old in, a rural town in the States, in North America,
Mhm.
or the UK. If we're talking about the theme of a garden, what
Mhm.
do you have in your garden in BC is going to be totally different to what do you have in your garden in, Hong Kong. They're like, we don't have a garden. So
Yeah.
keeping it really relatable and relevant, not just to the age group, but to the group that you're actually speaking to. And then going much deeper with that and making it relevant and relatable to what is that particular group, that
Mhm.
community going through at the time. Because obviously we all know, yes, we all went through the pandemic, but honestly, we all went through it very differently.
Yeah.
And, what is going on in that particular community, in that particular school, with those particular children
Mm.
or teenagers. So making it really relatable and relevant for them. There's no point me going into a school talking about exam stress and anxiety when actually I'm walking into a school where they don't have exams coming up, or it's a Steiner school where that's just not what that's just
Yeah.
not on their radar. So
Right.
it's making it really relevant to the group that you're working with, and that is getting to know them, of course. But
Right.
I do think that if you make the effort to make sure it is relevant and relatable to that age and to that community and that particular group, then you're going to build trust. You're going to build the connection a lot quicker, and the respect.
Mm.
And then that allows them to open up to your teachings.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. I remember talking to a yoga teacher, and she said she went to a really amazing yoga teacher training, and she brought it back to her classroom, and she was working with preschools, and they loved it. It was stories and themes and all these kinds of things. And then she tried to do the same lessons with her 4th and 5th graders, and it was a total flop. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing, right? It isn't a one size fits all. Like you said, you have to, it's just like being a teacher. It doesn't matter, we're coming in with yoga and mindfulness, but the same would be if you taught a different topic, right? No matter what you're bringing as an educator, we have to look at it from a point of view of what's relatable, what are the themes, what are the topics, what are the interests of those children, right?
Absolutely.
So that makes absolutely so much truth in there, that there isn't a one size fits all, that we adapt. And I love that you're going into the different communities to teach the yoga teacher train to the folks in that area. So you're able to spend more time as a yoga teacher trainer to speak to the communities to make it relevant for them as they're teaching into their communities too. I love that. Right.
Yeah.
And what would you say? So the different ages, this is a common idea. So sometimes people have different ages within a class. How do you cater to the different age groups?
So I think for the early years children, again, it's what do they relate to? What do they respond well to? Typically music, storytelling, lots of dynamic movements, and I think engaging their interests. So typically, let's say, I always think animals is a great one, nature,
Right.
Going into the jungle, into the forest. And maybe some art as well, I think, for that age group. So really making it a very holistic, multimedia approach to teaching yoga, mindfulness, and meditation, but through those creative forms that really engage, both sides of the brain, but typically that right side of the brain, which is the more creative, emotional side, that is more, I'd say, more developed. Let's use that right. More developed with the early years children. So that's kind of the 6 years and under. They do like a lot of props, and that can be simple things. It could just be stones to hold on to. It could be feathers or flowers to use in their breathing techniques, or the, belly breath and relaxation. But I think the younger children do need to be stimulated visually, verbally, kinesthetically, with all the different types of movements. And then moving up to the age bracket, so 7 to 10, their brain, the left side of the brain, the logical, analytical side of the brain, likes to be stimulated. So I think challenging them mentally in a fun way, with facts and, whether it be like fun quizzes or little group discussions, partner work. So you're stimulating their brain as well as, moving the body and challenging the body. And then with teenagers, you've got the two different sides. They need the restorative sometimes. And then they need those powerful poses where they're leaving feeling really confident and comfortable in their body. So that, I think, with teenagers, it's definitely asking them what they want from yoga, what's their experience of it, really just trying to gauge what they want and then giving it to them.
I love it. And can you think of a story? There must have been a time over your years thinking about maybe when you're in a situation where a child wasn't engaged in your class, and maybe what you did to kind of capture them.
You're always engaged in my classes.
Yeah, right.
No, it's not true. Of course, there's always children in your classes. As you can be it doesn't matter how long you've been teaching.
Right.
There are always children that are not necessarily engaged. And yes, there are multiple times. I would say the most recent time. So again, bear in mind, I've been teaching for like 20 years. And still, even just last month, I can think of a time where I was teaching a family yoga class, had a 4-year-old in there. And he just wasn't engaged. He just didn't want to participate, and that's completely fine. For me, I just let them have a little bit of time. Sometimes I need the first couple of classes, right, to get to know me, build up that trust. But this was the third session he'd had with me. So he wasn't engaged, and then he started to be a little bit disruptive. He wanted, to get the attention of the other children. He wanted his brother to play with him. He wanted to be off over there. So I brought out my props, I had my shells, and we were doing a sea theme. And that was like, he wasn't that interested. He smashed one of the shells. I was like, okay. So let's choose an animal. What animal do you want to be? I don't want to be an animal. Okay, no problem. What do you want to do then? And that's it. Let's just sit down. What do you want to do? You tell me, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I want to lie down. Cool. Let's do Shavasana. Does everyone else want to lie down like jellyfish? If you want to lie down like jellyfish, we can breathe like this. So some of the children were, jellyfish like this. And he just lay there. Oh. He didn't want to move. He just wanted to relax and listen to the music. Yeah. And that's totally fine. So I went through all these stages of, okay, use the props. That didn't work. Okay, ask him what kind of animal he wants to be. He doesn't want to be an animal. So I should have just done it straight from the start. What do you want to do? Yeah. Okay, you're too tired to move. Right. You just want to lie down. That's great. Let's all go into Shavasana. That's it. That's what I'm trying to get you into anyway.
Right. The movement is only the end goal is actually Shavasana anyway.
Exactly.
He was like, let's just go there. Right. I love
exactly.
That. Yeah, that's
so I think, that is sometimes we need reminders ourselves. And I think with, we often as teachers can underestimate the younger children. Maybe they don't know what they want, or, they should be doing what we're telling them to do. We're the teacher, we're the guidance, we know what's best for them, but actually sometimes they know they just need to lie down, or they just need some movement, or they just need to talk. But if you ask them, what do you need right now? What am I not giving you? They will tell you. In fact, they're telling you when they're being disruptive.
Yes.
That's what they're telling you. You're not giving me what I need right now.
Right.
And I think as teachers, we have to go, okay, that's okay. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong and you're not doing anything wrong. We're just communicating in different ways here.
Right. Awesome. And I think that speaks to two things. First, your confidence as a teacher, though you've been teaching for 20 years, but you have to have the confidence to hold the space, to be okay with whatever's happening, because I can imagine you've got the parents there too. You said a family yoga class, right? So you've got the adults in the room, and it can be embarrassing, right? When you look like you don't have control of the class.
Yeah.
But you have to have the confidence and hold the space and know that the work works, right? And so that speaks to you keeping calm and organized through all that, checking in with yourself, taking a pause, right? And also the space where he's coming from is understanding what's under his iceberg. Right. So the behavior above was he's running around not paying attention, but what's underneath that, right? Like you said, he's probably tired. Maybe he hasn't had enough to drink or eat or whatever. He's not having his needs met, as you say, right? And so coming together, those two things, staying yourself calm and organized so you can connect with him and see what his needs are below the surface. That's a beautiful example. Beautiful. Love that. Awesome.
Yes, I summarized it so nicely there.
Beautiful. Do you have anything else you want to say? Any other tips for us in terms of how to engage children or help them?
I mean, honestly, I have so many tips, as I'm sure you do as well, which is, why I do have a lot of workshops, so many free videos on my YouTube channel. I have a lot of free resources. So I would definitely, encourage people to take a look there. I would say behavior management, classroom management, vocabulary is changing, but it is something that I'm so interested in because it really does come from a place of understanding children, understanding their brains, how they develop, their emotional needs. It's so much more than it's not at all controlling the class. Yes. It is so much more about understanding them, their needs, and their individual abilities and their brains. Yeah. So there's so much that we could go into, but I think as you say, teachers just need to, it's just practice. It's just having confidence, building up that confidence, and just trying to stay calm and centered, and the children will stay with you.
Right. And they'll feed off yours. So if you're practicing your own breath, your own mindfulness, coming to this present moment, they will feed off that energy as well. Right.
Absolutely. And this is something that I do say to teachers, that if you need a breathing technique during that class, like you as the teacher need it, do it with the children. Don't be sat there feeling anxious. Like, get everybody up doing your wood chopper breath, or get everybody lying down doing your belly breath. If you need it, the children probably need it as
Right.
well.
And I think that modeling too, I was listening to a talk the other day, and the presenter came on and she said, I'm really nervous and I just need to take a few deep breaths. Let's do this together. So I love that
Yeah.
even, this was an adult to adults, but even as I talk to my daughter about this all the time, saying, I just need a moment, let's breathe together. And I'll tell her what's going on for me. So we could model, what's happening, how am I feeling? So identifying the feeling, and then what difference it makes to take a breathing practice.
Absolutely.
Afterwards, and let's do that together. I love that. So it's co-regulating, right? Together.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So how can we find you, Laura? If people are interested in taking teacher train and they want a weekend in Bali or Thailand or Dubai, or, or if it's that communities in that area, how can we find you?
Yes, you can obviously email me, or find out all the information on my website. I do have teacher trainings coming up in Bali, working with the Wood School, which is a nature-based nonprofit school, which is very exciting. Thailand, Hong Kong, where else? Many places. So yeah, my website is it's such a long one, divine/light/yoga.com. It's probably easier just to Google Laura McEgan and then Divine Light Yoga. Or yes, email me, and please check out my free resources, because I have so many. I have hundreds of videos and workshops that are free, and I just think, please, we create these things for other teachers to benefit from. So I would love people to kind of head over there and take a look at what's interesting for them.
Awesome. And what's next for you, Laura? What's, besides doing all these trainings, what's your what thing are you working on? What's your next sort of project?
Oh, well, I am working on something that I can't reveal yet.
Oh, that's intriguing.
It is. Yes, I know. Sorry. I'm really not one of those people that likes to create drama, but it is something that I can't actually talk about yet, until the contract is signed. But it is something very, very different that combines my absolute love of travel with my love of kids yoga, and hopefully, well, it will literally reach millions of children.
Yay! Well, that's exciting. Keep us posted for sure.
I will let you know. I'll come back and comment.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll have to email me if you want to find out.
Yes, perfect.
Time.
Love it. Thank you so much for taking the time, Laura. I really so appreciate you, and look forward to seeing how your journey unfolds.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.